Welcome to the Property Development Book Club podcast. Please be advised that panel members are expressing their own views and opinions, which should not be construed as advice. The audience must carry out their own research and consult an appointed professional for advice.
Hello everybody, welcome to the Property Developers Book Club podcast. My name's Abe Laker. I'm joined with a multidisciplinary panel here today, and we're going to introduce ourselves in a minute, but the main topic today is let's talk about planning permission. So I'm going to introduce myself. I'm Abe Laker. I'm a Senior Associate Director and a planning consultant. I'm a Chartered Planning Consultant, and I have over 10 years experience working on an array of developments in London and the South East. And to my left, Adewole.
Hi everyone, I'm Adewole Ademolake. I'm a Senior Development Manager and Chartered Planning and Development Surveyor, founder of Abe Laker, who's currently sponsoring this podcast. And my interest is I work on large regeneration projects, outline permissions, reserve matters, and all of the Section 73s, 96As. That's what I do. So thank you very much, and we look forward to discussing this shortly.
Hi there, I'm Hugh McEwen. I'm an architect, and in my practice we specialise in giving advice to local authorities on their planning policy.
I'm Hanna Afolabi. I'm a development director, and in my role I manage the process through planning to get to construction and to people living in the properties. Yeah. And so similar to Adewole, all the legal jargon associated with planning is what I do.
And hi everyone, I'm Justin Reid. I wear two hats, one as a senior planning officer in local planning authority and the other one as a planning consultant with a focus on minor development projects.
Lovely. So let's get into this. It's going to be interesting. The first question is, what is planning permission and why is it needed? Now, I'm going to direct this first to your local authority hat, because you are the main gatekeepers when it comes to planning permission. So if I can get your view first, then I'll throw it over to you.
Sure. So most building works would need planning permission. So there are certain things that you can do under permitted development, such as loft conversions, rear extensions, subject to you meeting certain criteria. But for example, if you wanted to extend further than what would be allowed under permitted development, or if you wanted to build a new house or do a conversion, that sort of thing, then you're likely to require planning permission for that sort of stuff.
Do we need to define what permitted development is?
Yeah, I was going to say, do you want to define that?
So in a nutshell, permitted development is works that don't require planning permission. So for example, if you live in a standard terrace house, generally speaking, you can do a 3-metre extension with a height of 3 meters under permitted development. So there are certain, I guess, household extensions that don't require planning permission, and that's classed as permitted development.
Fine. What's your view on the old planning permission?
The definition of planning permission under section, I can't remember what paragraph it is in the Town and Country Planning Act, but I believe it's either the change of use, mining, etc. So if you're changing something from one form to another, it is going to require some form of planning permission. Justin's defined permitted development in detail, so I don't need to go into that. So for instance, if you've got a house, you want to change it to an office, that's a change of use. And that change of use could potentially be covered, depending on your area, under permitted development. In some cases, potentially, maybe not, but also under planning permission. And it all depends on stuff like, what's that thing, Article 4 directions. So planning permission can be as simple as complicated. In short, it's a matter of changing something from one thing to another and making sure you've got the framework and the legal law planning policies and you're meeting those requirements. That's what I would say in short.
And just to be clear, in terms of permitted development, and obviously you mentioned the Article 4 directives, certain areas have had, or certain developments have had their permitted development rights removed. It allows the local authority to then control that development through obviously having to submit a planning application. So permitted development obviously allows you to just to do works without having to do planning permission, which means you're not at the scrutiny of the local authority through a planning application. Whereas if those rights have been removed, then you obviously have the full weight of the local authority's planning policies, which can be a long process, but we'll stay positive. So just move on to the next question. So we talked about permitted development rights, people being able to do that themselves, and application. So in your view, what goes into a good planning application? And I'm going to go back to Justin this one just because I want to understand what a good planning application looks like.
Sure.
What a local authority planning officer, once they get that through, the planning portal, they receive an application. Obviously, you have the validation checks, but what is a good planning application in your view?
Yeah, so it's very, I guess, dependent on what the proposal is, but I would say both the quality and quantity of documents submitted. And what I mean by that is, for example, if you're going to build a new house, it's better to, I guess, a good application looks, you would front load as much information as possible. So you would have your transport statements, maybe a tree statement, and all the professional statements. Another kind of indication of what a good plan application looks like is the design and access statement. So that kind of sets out what the proposal is and how it meets the planning policies. So when you read it, you can generally get an idea of whether they've considered the relevant planning policies and whether their proposal meets the relevant criteria. So yeah, I would say that.
Right. So Hugh, you mentioned obviously a good design access statement. Yourself as an architect, what's your view on that? Because in my time working in planning, I've seen an array of design access statements. To be honest, one's just literally being the key points on like 2 pieces of paper to very lengthy documents. So in your view, on that point that Justin mentioned, what is a very good design access statement?
I think it's really about something that gives the case officer confidence.
Yeah.
Because your application is going to be determined by this person, this case officer in the council, and you really want to give them an easy job. You want to make them feel secure that they're making the right decision and recommending your application for approval. So yeah, it's supplying all that information as Justin touched on, but really kind of helping them to help you. So it's wording things in a way that maybe a case officer might want to understand them, referring to policy that's relevant to that, and kind of giving them all the tools to then write a supportive statement to give you permission. So I think it's really about that confidence.
Yeah, I mean,
I was going to throw something in actually, because I think that it's important for listeners to understand the minimum requirements for a compliant planning application. Because that as a minimum, if you submit a red line, you've got a location plan to the right scale, application form, fees, and then you break that down. And I think that Justin made a good point around design and access statement. That probably could get you far between 1 to 9 units, but you can't just submit that on a larger scale. So that will then go into, you've got the environmental impact assessment, you've got the planning statements so what I'm saying in short is, if it's a smaller scale scheme, you may or may not need to speak to a planning consultant, but that's a different conversation. You pass that on to the likes of who might be able to get away with writing that policy. But if it's larger development, I strongly recommend, or I feel that it's more appropriate at that point to get a planning consultant. And then there's various other, and we spoke about it, Abe, before, and I said to him, I remember saying to Justin a few months ago, or maybe a year or 2 ago, I said to him, when I submitted a planning application on my own, I basically submitted a red line plan, floor plans, planning policies, and that was it. But he said I won't be able to get away with it today.
No,
because you've got all of these supporting statements, supporting documents. So I think it's just making clear that there is a clear difference between small or minor applications to major applications, and that was it for me.
But then that also depends on the scale. If you're doing an extension to the back of your house, you can get away with not having a design and access statement.
Yes.
All you need is the elevation, the floor plan.
Yeah, exactly.
What's been extended, what's there before, what's there after. Whereas when you're scaling up to a development of 9 units and or 1,000 units, then you're in the realm of completely different things, because then you have before you even got into your application, you've had to do your transport assessment, you have to do air quality monitoring, you need to do acoustic testing, overheating,
flood risk
assessment, energy sustainability, what is your construction logistics, what's your program for delivery. You've engaged at that point with an architect, landscape consultant, M&E, structural civil engineer, you've got ecologists.
Circular economy.
Circular economy. You have to consider
Biodiversity,
the biodiversity.
all these new things
Is it?
coming
Are there
on.
tree protection in the area? Do you have to relocate trees? How are you intending to do that? Is it a bat route?
Bats.
Do not forget the bats and all the birds.
Specialist
Like
ecologists.
the specialist
Peregrine
ecologists.
falcons.
You
One of
know.
our projects.
What is your drainage strategy? Are you connecting into Thames Water? What is the energy strategy? Are you connecting into, or are you creating a CHP energy? Like
Combined heat
you're
and power,
how far are we going? What is your electric car strategy?
Yeah.
Is everyone getting car? Or is actually, do you have any cars on your development?
Yeah.
And does that work? Like so when you're talking about an application of scale, like it blows up, and all of that information, especially when you're in a major scheme, and or in a large scheme or a major application, you need to do all of that before you've even got a pack of information to submit to a local authority.
Yeah.
And also along the way, you have to also go through consistent pre-app meetings to ensure that you're carrying along your local planning authority.
Yeah.
To ensure that when the information does drop, because it's like typically like thousands of pages of document, that they have enough time to process and digest it.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree. I mean, it's done to the scale what makes a good application in terms of the development. I mean, personally, as a planning consultant, I think that every application should have some form of planning statement in there, regardless of units 1 to 9 or whatever it is, or major. Planning statement comes in various forms. Small cover letter could just do the job, address the policies, or obviously as we're talking larger scale, full wealth of documents, summary of all the various technical reports, how that meets planning policy, and how it mitigated all the impacts of the development. But for me as a planning consultant, I feel that when you're going to put a planning application in, yes, you can put in design and access statement, the red line plan, elevations, fine. And local authorities may go, okay, fine, I understand that. But for me as a planning consultant to do a very good job, you need to explain how this development meets the policies in whatever shape or form. And I think a good planning application has just either a cover letter or a planning statement that accompanies that, because when you get it, you're going to look at the plans, you look at the design access statement, lovely, but then there's that element of work have to do. And we're going to get onto this point about local authorities and the broken planning system later, but you are very under-resourced, local authorities are very under-resourced and very stretched. So as you say, Hugh, anything that the developer can help with that process to make it as smooth and as clear as possible, to speed it up, given the kind of issues you're facing at the moment, will be obviously, is a good result in the end. But I want to move on to another very good question. You were talking about, developments, doing it ourselves, and you've done some in the past yourself, or, do you need a planning consultant? So now I'm going to ask, why do I need a planning consultant? Surely I should be able to do it myself. It's a very interesting question, because I've worked with developers who have had architects do the planning statement. And it's written in a very architectural way. just gonna say
that mean?
I'm just gonna say that. And then also we've had, where people done it themselves, and some fundamental issues have either been missed, or what they're trying to pin their development on in terms of hanging on a particular planning policy is actually not relevant to their development and may cause more issues than others. So, Mr. Adewole, you obviously have undertaken this process by yourself. I think a few of us have as well, but please give me what your view is, because I will break it down again later in terms of understanding, what the planning consultant does in terms of what our key issues are. But you want to go for that one?
So you laugh at this, but the only confidence I had in doing a planning application on my own is watching another planning consultant.
Okay.
Many years ago, because what will happen is, one thing about us as development managers, we have to be very comfortable with the detail.
Of course.
So for instance, people, when I speak to people about planning, they think I'm a planning consultant, but I just listen well and I understand what's happening in my projects. So because of that, I was in a position to say, you know what? It's almost like, you see when there was one paper thing that people used to do.
Yeah.
I remember it's like the planning consultants are so good at doing it. And I said, you know what? Let me get a piece of paper, let me give it a go myself. So someone approached me to say, Adewole, help me with a planning application, and it got rejected so many times. And I said, you know what? said, yeah, I'll help you out. Long story short, I got him planning, and then someone else got in touch with me, and I got them planning. Now, I'm gonna give you, that's all good and fun and games, that's amazing. I had PI insurance at the time, so just for your information.
I was about to say.
If you are going to be providing any form of services, make sure you have professional indemnity insurance. And my employer at the time was very aware that I was running a side business on the weekend. Very important.
That's very important.
But the thing that happened is, and this is where I put my hands up and said, you know what, you need a planning consultant. Now, permitted development only relates to certain types of homes. Houses, apartments don't have permitted development. Now, I must have said to I had a client at the time, helped them planning, and he said to me, oh, it's a masonette, it's got a ground floor flat. I said, yeah, permitted, what do you want to do, HMO? I said, yeah, you can get it, you can get it. And then after I did some research, and I said, goodness me, I shouldn't have said that, because now he has an expectation that he's got an express permission.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Now, I've said that to him, and then I called him back to say, you don't have permitted development.
No.
He put down the phone. His wife said he screamed, ah! And I thought, but lo and behold, I still got planning for him. So imagine, I was already at the back foot, because changing a masonette to a HMO is difficult from a policy point of view. But I was still able to help him get it through. So I put all of that to say that there's elements of it that you can do yourself, but now that I'm learning to be, they say that a skillful cutter does less cutting. As a developer, we need to focus on what we do as developers and allow the people that do the skillful cutting, i.e. planning consultants, architects, to do what they do well. So I put all of that out there. And also the reason why I think development managers do it themselves is because you know that the financial impacts of planning, we have to be very comfortable managing all of the monies involved. So you know, Section 106 costs, child space, payments, all of that stuff. So I would say, I'm not going to say, but the benefit of a planning consultant is the eloquence and the communication, and we discussed that at length. I think we always got into an argument over it, and I would agree with you on that. There is an eloquence and there's an etiquette that goes with being a planning consultant. And I feel that that's something that not many people can grasp if you're not a planning consultant. And that is my summary on that.
I mean, do you want to go?
Well, actually, like I definitely value my planning consultants on projects because of that eloquence and the fact that firstly it's a skill, but it's a lot of detailed policy and information, and planning actually continues to change. So you think, assume a local plan is maintained, then all of a sudden, like, they've changed a policy around the amount of quality for a specific building, and or they've changed their SHLA, or you know, all of these things that come out.
What does SHLA mean again, sorry?
Oh, you're testing
Strategic
me.
Housing Land Availability Assessment.
When I was doing my MRICS, when I was doing my
Strategic Housing Market Assessment.
Yeah, when I was doing that, I do all of them. Now I'm like, okay, jeez, But effectively, when you're going through that process, when you're talking about the need and area, I think the planning consultants are on the pulse because they are specialists. This is what they do. As a development management professional, you are spinning plates. You're a generalist, juggling everything. So you're not gonna know when they've changed something, or there's like a change in local plan or another. And this is where, especially when you're doing regeneration, you need to know what the other developer across the road is doing. So if they've changed their Section 106 and it's in your favour or not in your favour, you need to know that so you can apply it to your application. And the planning consultant knows exactly where and how to find it. But all of that information and planning information on consented schemes, you can find it on the local planning authority's website. They publish Section 106's viability information, etc. But as you mentioned, we're not going to have time to I would probably we would look at it. If it was my personal development, I probably would. But you guys as planning consultants are best placed to be able to extrapolate the key information that we need to consider. So
I think on that point as well, in terms of wiring a planning consultant, again, it's when we speak to case officers, we speak in the same language, and that speeds up the process. Someone who wants to do it themselves, and then say something that along the line goes wrong, and they say you need to do a Section 96A or Section 73. I can just go, okay, fine. Whereas they'll go, sorry, what does Section 96 say? What does Section 73? So Section 96 is a non-material amendment to a planning permission. Section 73 is a minor material amendment. There's a lot of nuances in terms of what constitutes.
Yeah, there was a case law that
There's
happened
case law,
a few years
exactly.
ago that changed it around.
What constitutes the, what is minor, what is non-material, what is minor. The jury's still out, but different authorities have their own discretion to apply to each particular one.
There's a lot of discretion in both.
But from a planning consultant's view, it's, as you said, for developers, we manage that risk. Because as we all know, planning permission is not guaranteed. And as a planning consultant, we're able to put together a planning strategy that could either save you time, money, avoid certain avenues of conversation with the council, which is not required. For example, if some people may go down the route of a lawful development certificate instead of actually going for a planning application. And that is a very, very important route to undertake, because you can get your development approved as lawful without having to have the scrutiny of planning policies, because that's more of a legal requirement as opposed to a planning policy requirement. So understanding that process as well, but also putting together the whole package and saying, okay, we're going to go for a pre-app here, we're going to have public consultation here, we're going to go an application here. That full process, we're going to consult these people here, even though we just spoke about consultation previously. It's how you manoeuvre within this environment. Now, we're going to get into the conversation about, is the planning system broken? That's another conversation for later. But being able to manoeuvre with your client's intentions on your back to know that, well, we can't do this because if we say this, that opens up a can of worms here. But manoeuvring within the framework. I'm not saying we're doing things out of the ordinary or untoward or illegal. Manoeuvring within the framework that we have. But
and I would say, just to add on to what you said, I would say town planners and local authority are seen as the guys with the red tape.
Yes.
And planning consultants are the guys with the scissors. So they
That's true.
So scissors
as well. Scissors. We're cutting. Not even. We're going under it. We're cutting.
You're cutting through the red tape.
Sometimes you just need to know how to position your application, or just position your application in order to get accepted at the end of the day. Even if your proposal doesn't meet the policies, there's a way that you can kind of structure it and almost tell a story with the documents you've submitted in order to make the council look at it a bit more favourably.
Can I? So I think what you said is very much true, but like I think and to also like reinforce the point of why you need a planning consultant is because it's so human. We talk about planning on the very policy basis. There's a lot of terminology, a lot of jargon, a lot of legal documentation, a lot of conditions that go through the process. And people spend millions of pounds to put an application together. At the end of the day, even if you are policy compliant, you might not get planning, and the reason being is because it's about the human element of it.
And that's why I got those three planner. It's not because mine was the best application. It's that I was courteous. How can I help? Got any questions? Oh, I wanted that drawing from. I'll get that resolved.
But I think this is the other thing. Like, you have to remember. Like, I don't know about you, but when I'm on my project, I'm in it. Like, I'm emotional about this. And so when someone's sitting there saying, "You guys haven't done enough," best believe I don't want to be the person replying, because I'm already pissed off. I'm like, where's my planning consultant who's going to handle this situation? Because like, we've spent millions. This is now a time. This is a program issue. I can't be the person sat in front of someone saying, you don't know like all of the issues. I need someone to come with the policy and to articulate why we need to do it.
Thing to happen.
This is like, let's cut through the red tape with the scissors and get up over the line.
On that point, one of our clients that we have, he's very at arm's length with planning. So something, he'll get a letter from the council or a response from the council, case of whatever, pass it straight to us, and he goes, the reason I do that is because you are my comfort blanket. You just relax me, because he sees something come through, a response from the statutory consultee, and he's now going, oh God, how much is it going to cost me? And we just go, actually no, it's not.
Fine.
It's not your problem.
It's not your problem, but also it's not as big a problem you're thinking it out.
You give it to, and then you guys, because you know what? There's something that happened, and I spoke to Justin about this year. There was a small application. It was a C3 to C4. So in short, I thought it was a straightforward slam dunk case. I researched, like they say that C3 to C4, you have to look at the cumulative impact of what you're doing.
Yes.
You want to take away housing from community. there was less than 10% HMOs on that road.
Okay.
So I said, oh, I'm well within my bounds in the planning policy terms. So I submitted the application, guess what happened? Got rejected. Fine. Yeah? We went to appeal, guess what happened? It got rejected. Someone, a planning consultant, after all of that, they did one stroke, it was resolved. What was it? What did he do? What process did he use again?
Yeah, I remember you telling me actually. I think it was he converted it into a care home. I think it was C3.
And he saved that person. You know what? I walked out of that situation. That happened many years ago. I looked at it and said, you know what? I should just quit development. Because someone, and this is where everyone needs to stick to what they're good at.
Yes.
The problems that we have as development managers and development professionals, I know that planning consultants couldn't manage what we do. I couldn't manage what Hugh does as an architect.
No.
And this is where it's just everyone needs to respect themselves. So now, if I get into any of those incidents, I'm not going to say, oh, I'm going to sit here. I'll say, I'm going to speak to yourself, Abe. I'm going to speak to Justin, and just pass it on, because you guys are the experts and be able to find the angles.
That's a very good point.
And I think the number of people that need to be involved in these large schemes. But it's so important to do it right from the start.
Exactly.
And I think there's that old saying, if it's expensive to do something twice. You've got to do something once. That's not the saying. You know what I mean?
It's expensive to do something twice.
It's really important to have that team that kind of knows what they're doing right from day one.
And it's funny because me and Adewole had this conversation. I think we were at the BPIC Awards, and you said to me, so why do we need a planning consultant? And I was like, well, we argue about the word. And I said to him, what do you mean by that? I said, the way planning policy is constructed, you read it, and you go, okay, I could do that. But actually there's a few nuances in there, a few can, may, shall. Like those words there, if you're not hot on understanding what the connotations are to that, you will just read that blanket and then just go ahead and do a development and realise, oh, why has it got rejected, or why is this, why is that? So,
or you're walking into a condition that you didn't realise.
Exactly. So planning
I'm converted, by the way.
That's good. I'm happy to hear. Planning consultants, in my view, slightly biased. Alright, this is the Property Developers Book Club podcast. If you're enjoying what you see, please like, share and subscribe. Thank you.
I'm Adewole Ademolake, founder at Abe Laker, which specialises in property development and development management. We are sponsoring the first season of the Property Development Book Club podcast, which will be out on all platforms soon. So just back again, we talked about obviously having a planning consultant, the planning what makes a good planning application. We now just want to go into sort of the pre-application process before an application is actually submitted, and also then this determination process, and then there's going to be a few grenades later on, which will get the conversation bubbling. But we want to just talk about pre-application process. Justin, do you want to give us an overview?
Yeah, so essentially pre-planning is an application you submit prior to submitting the actual planning application. So that allows you to have your discussions essentially behind closed doors with the local planning authority. It allows you to get their views on whether a proposal is likely to be supported or not, and what you can do in order to kind of make it more favourable to the local planning authority. In my view, it is recommended. It all depends on the kind of complexity of the scheme, but it is generally worthwhile having those discussions behind closed doors with the local planning authority, because once you submit your plan application, the neighbours get notified.
Public domain,
Exactly, and it's more difficult to kind of amend it after it's been submitted. So it's better to get all your problems ironed out, and it makes the actual planning process, or in theory, it should make the planning process smoother.
Okay, so on that point there, and I want to ask the two developers, managers, if you have a good planning consultant, do you think it's necessary to have that step of pre-application process?
100%.
Or do you think you could wholly trust your planning consultant, who basically can tell you, you know what, we know what the scheme is, you're going to send it to the council, they're going to come back with pretty much everything I've said, so I could save you time here, and then we can leave it as scheduled. I want to gauge that view, because I've used both in the past, and it's been interesting.
Yeah, sorry, that's just not going to work. Like I said,
so you put a lot of onus on that. I
think you have to to remember, like, planning is a risk. You're putting millions, tens of millions of pounds, especially depending on the scale of the project. But at the minimum, you're putting about millions of pounds into a process of just risk, because if you don't get that planning, your money's gone down the drain, your program's out, and you can't actually start making your returns at the end, which, I mean, or even just deliver anything, so you can't start anything. So for me, like, a pre-application, despite what the planning, like my planning consultant's saying, means that I can sit confidently in the room with my seniors and say, actually, no, we've spoken to the local authority and either validate what you've now advised me, or say we probably are at risk here on certain things. Let's change this up. It's going to have X impact on the development appraisal.
Fine.
And so I will feel so uncomfortable not engaging the local authority. Also, I think there's a point around, and I want to talk from the large scale regeneration projects. There's a point about the planning officers want to see the developer. They want to see the person in the room in a pre-application, telling them, reassuring them that they care about the area in which they're developing it.
Basically.
They don't want to see another local. Like, how many? You've probably sat in on several representing several applications. The same case officers. They want to see the face behind the thing, and they want to have like someone they can hold accountable to. And so, like, I know the officers, my case officers, because I was sitting on meetings with them and tell them what we're planning on doing. Also, that my planning consultant doesn't know all of the socioeconomic things that we're doing, right? Like, you know, the grants, the funding, the KPIs, the apprentices, they have no idea about our like DA obligations to the extent that I would know. I need to be able to sit there and defend my project as well, where my planning consultant might not have the whole picture. So a pre-app for me is fundamental, regardless of if someone says you don't need it or not.
Is that the same view?
100%. No, I totally agree with Hannah. I can't add any. I totally agree. I think the main thing is, you know, like, as much as I love my planning consultants, they're not all encompassing. They're not omnipresent like God. Like, they're not So there's things that they may miss, and when I say miss, it might not be intentional, because we're all human, and because of that, I may pick up on things to say, I'm looking at that person's eyes, he said this, and that needs to be addressed now in this conversation. So, you know, that between myself and Hannah, where we lead our projects, we are listening and observing risk. So that transport person
risk and cost.
Risk and cost. And program.
And we can't leave a planning consultant to agree what the Section 106 obligations are.
Oh no, of course not.
We have to be able to say, all right, we're going to come back to you on that. Or can you do extra charging points in your development? That can't be a planning consultant agreement.
No.
It has to be us. But you know, more importantly, I think that Hannah made the point. Obviously, pre-app. Justin, you mentioned the pre-app process. For a lot of our schemes, we do what they call a planning performance agreement. And that planning performance agreement is a long-term arrangement with a local authority. It is not binding. Pre-application advice does not necessitate that you're going to have guaranteed planning permission, but it is promoted under the National Planning Policy Framework. So for that reason, that's a tick, but it doesn't mean you still may get an extra.
On that point of planning performance agreements, I know it was mentioned previously on the podcast. I struggle with it. Reason being is local authorities are under-resourced. I'm now paying, on top of my planning application fee, an additional fee to get a one-to-one or an officer who's going to dedicate their time to the scheme.
Thank you for listening to the Property Development Book Club podcast. We know you're loving what you're hearing, so don't forget to like, share and subscribe. And so a PPA, I understand, like, in the context of things, we shouldn't have to need it. And I think it's a symptom of the system that we're in. However, we do need it we do need it, and it's beneficial if you want to prioritize your project.
So you mentioned a very key point there, manage risk. So at this point, we walk through the pre-app, being a planning consultant, the planning application itself, the submission and so forth. Now we're through determination. And managing risk, we've managed that. We've controlled as much as we can. Now we're getting to determination, and it's gone to planning committee. And now we have very strong feelings about members of committees not being, let's say, the most educated in planning. Obviously they're taking the view from their case officers as their advice, and then obviously they're applying that to making their decision whilst taking consideration the various local communities that they represent or wards represent.
Yeah.
What is everyone's view on planning committee members taking a decision on planning applications? And I want to put that to everyone. Maybe Hugh, you want to start on this one?
Sure, yeah. I mean, I think it is really important that there's a democratic accountability, attached, and like you say, that people who are the voice of their communities that have been elected, to that position, can bring their unique understanding, of the impact of a scheme to something. So I think that is really important. That's an amazing thing that's kind of enshrined within the planning system. I think on the other hand, it's kind of problematic, and that there isn't more specific understanding, as you touched on there, of the planning considerations. So I think there's a lot of heart, but maybe there's could be more head in some of these decisions.
Who wants to take this one? Let's just
I'm happy to.
Yeah, actually, the authority. Your authority hat would be very good.
Yeah. So, essentially, if a planning application is going to be rejected, it should be rejected on planning grounds.
Correct.
Now, at planning committee, wherever that happens,
that's here or there. So
Yeah.
So, it's a difficult one because at the end of the day, the planning officers, they're qualified in what they do. So essentially, they should be the decision makers, in my opinion. And that's right.
I find it very difficult when planning committees go against the planning officer's decisions or recommendations to planning committee. As in, they've had the planning balance, they weighed up the scheme, and then now you've got this outside entity that has more maybe a political tie to the decision making process. To then obviously that influences their decision, but Hanna, I want you to breathe and then tread carefully. Yeah.
Because I think going back to the risk point, and actually just the human part of the planning system is that we have a very detailed planning system, right? You go through very strict assessments. You've gone through maybe 18 months of a design process and several consultants to pinpoint every single detail. You've gone through extensive consultation with statutory utility providers and statutory stakeholders and the local community, and then you've submitted this application that hits every single policy mark. Affordable housing, your commitment to seal,
your
draft section 106. You've already listed out all the conditions. You've the quality is amazing. You've gone through a design review panel.
You've gone through the PPA.
You've gone through your PPA. You've
done the
committed,
consultation, everything.
You've gone through blood, sweat, and tears, right? And your best friend planning, your planning officer who you've been working with on this for 18 months, a meeting at least once a month for the last 18 months. It's you guys have done a great job. Let's put it in front of the committee. You're now at committee meeting, and people who have gotten 1,000, I don't know, it depends on what you give them. You've given all of this information to that you spent 18 months on. Right, they get it maybe a week before. They're commenting on 3 other schemes in that same evening,
which can sometimes sway their views.
Exactly, and bearing in mind we're policy compliant. There is a conversation that's been had with people who aren't development specialists, planning specialists, architects. Actually fully reflective of the local community, who have political agendas because they want to get re-voted in, and they are the people determining your application. I think it's a kind of really perverse process because on a number of occasions, they're not actually asking planning questions or planning policy questions, or they don't necessarily even have a full understanding of what they're saying yes or no to. And as from a public person's perspective, you will never assume that the decision makers or the main decision makers are people who are not fully, I'm not saying uneducated because they have some training not fully educated on the process and are saying yes or no on something that is actually going to impact your life in a massive way.
I agree. I mean, there's obviously, a lot more training from like the Royal Tap Planning Institute for members of committee to start understanding, how to make for decision making and understanding, planning terminology, and everyone, they recommend that members go on that kind of training to sort of make the sort of decision making process a lot easier. But what we've picked up on throughout the whole of this podcast is that, another question was raised about, why does planning take so long? And I think we've touched on those, as you said, sort of obviously getting your team together, doing the pre-application process, doing the various surveys, reports, having the PPAs, having the pre-apps, getting a scheme together, putting it to planning, going through the 8-week or 13-week planning determination process, then going to planning committee, then obviously having section 106 and seal. So that full process, yes, takes time, and there's obviously bits of the way that delay that process. So with all that said, and managing risk, go on, Adewole.
I wanted to add something because we know when we talk about planning committees and the way they make decisions, what Hugh said is a very important point.
Yes.
Democratically elected people making a decision.
Yeah.
Their decisions should follow planning policy, but then it should also follow public opinion because their views should not be as that of a professional. It should be as a reflection of the community that they represent. So sometimes I just think for that, the reason I throw that out there is to say that the community, it may be probably policy compliant, but that building is going to take away my light or something. But on public balance, on the balance and scale, the right of light or the overshadowing issue.
Right of light is not a...
No. Right of light is a law.
You've done your daylight and sunlight test. But no, and I agree with you. Yeah. But the thing is that, and from the consultation of the planning committees that we've been to, typically they're not asking planning policy points. They are saying, they are talking.
But it's the court of public opinion.
But is it truly public opinion?
And on that point as well, you're saying obviously the benefit, this public benefit, that's what the main thing is. A good application would have done that engagement to the nth degree to obtain that public understanding, to implement that into their development. So hopefully you're assuming that they've, at this point, we probably should cover everything, it should be fine. But as I've said before, all of this is, we've mentioned the risks, the delays, the various nuances of the decision-making process. So a very simple question to end with, which may cause for a round 2 to come back. And I'll put this out there. So with all that said, is Britain's planning system broken? And who is benefiting from the broken system? So let's just take the first half because we haven't got time to finish the next bit. But in your view, Adewole, is the British planning system broken?
Yes.
You?
Yes, but I think there's lots of positives about it.
I agree. Yeah.
I will say no, because I think there needs to be more investment in what's already there in terms of the local authority side of things to make it work, and that funding is essential. Hanna?
No, I don't think the planning system is broken. I actually think the way it's implemented is the issue.
And well, this is, I don't know
you probably can't answer that.
What I will say is, I think the planning system has a crack in it, but I wouldn't say it's completely broken.
And this is what I want to say, we're all about outputs, outputs, the output is what, £300,000, 300,000 homes a year, that is the output. If we haven't achieved it for as long as I have existed, or my mum has existed, is that a system that is not broken?
It's not broken. It's not broken.
Like,
it needs more funding to achieve that. It needs more funding to achieve that.
Okay.
We're going to have to agree to disagree.
But then I think what you're that's not, the planning system is not the only reason we haven't achieved the housing numbers. There are several issues with that. There's the economic factor, there's the land supply, there's the amount of, the density is again, political agenda.
But as I've said,
I'm going to swear, I'm going to put myself to him, I'm going to say maybe.
Okay,
I'm going to put 50-50.
Change, right. It's not broken. At least we've got a bit of balance here, but just on that, to conclude on that, that's the end of this podcast. Thank you for listening. And see you later.
Thank you.